The autumn rain drummed against the windows of Maple Haven Children's Services in downtown Toronto, creating rivulets that seemed to mirror the tears Sarah Martinez had grown tired of shedding. As the agency's director, she had witnessed countless adoptions over her 15-year career, but 18-month-old Lucas remained a constant presence in the nursery. A beautiful, bright-eyed toddler whose profound deafness had become an invisible barrier between him and potential families. "Another cancellation," announced Mrs. Henderson, the veteran social worker, as she hung up the phone with a heavy sigh. The late October chill seemed to seep through the walls of the converted Victorian house that served as their office. The Thompsons decided to pursue a less complicated adoption. Sarah watched through the glass partition as Lucas played alone in the nursery, his tiny hands reaching for colorful blocks while the other children's laughter filled the air, a sound that would never reach him. His foster mother, Maria, sat nearby, her weathered hands moving gracefully in sign language as she narrated his play. At 62, Maria had been fostering children for over 2 decades, but her aging hands and back made it increasingly difficult for her to keep up with an active toddler. "It's the 7th family this month," Sarah said, her voice barely above a whisper. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across her cluttered desk, where Lucas's file sat thick with medical reports, psychological evaluations, and rejected applications. "They all say the same thing: they're not equipped for a child with special needs." The agency buzzed with its usual activity. Caseworkers hurried between offices, phones rang constantly, and the scent of fresh coffee mixed with the faint aroma of children's snacks from the daycare area. Yet Lucas's silence seemed to create a bubble of isolation around him, even in this space designed to bring families together. Dr. Patricia Kim, the agency's consulting pediatrician, appeared in the doorway, her white coat slightly wrinkled from a long day of examinations. "I've completed Lucas's latest hearing assessment," she said, her tone professional but tinged with sadness. "There's been no change. His hearing loss is profound and permanent. But Sarah, this child is thriving in every other way. His cognitive development is exceptional, his motor skills are advanced, and his ability to communicate through sign language is remarkable for his age." Sarah had seen it herself, the way Lucas's eyes lit up when Maria signed to him, how he clapped his hands with joy when he felt the vibrations of music through the floorboards, how he'd learned to sign more, please, and love with stunning clarity. But somehow, these miraculous developments seemed invisible to prospective parents who could only focus on what he couldn't do rather than what he could. "The problem isn't Lucas," Sarah said, standing to look out at the busy street below. Pedestrians hurried past under umbrellas, their breath visible in the crisp autumn air. Toronto's downtown core bustled with life, streetcars clanging, car horns honking, the general symphony of urban existence that Lucas would never hear but could feel in the vibrations beneath his feet. The problem is fear. Fear of the unknown, fear of learning something new, fear of being different. Mrs. Henderson joined them, her gray hair pulled back in its usual neat bun. "I received a call from the ministry this morning. If we can't find a placement for Lucas soon, they're considering moving him to a specialized group home in Ottawa. They think he might have better chances there." The thought hit Sarah like a physical blow. Lucas had known nothing but the warmth of this place, the consistency of Maria's care, and the love of their small but dedicated team. Moving him would mean starting over, severing the bonds he'd formed, and potentially condemning him to years in institutional care. "Give me 2 more months," Sarah said firmly. "There has to be someone out there who can see past his deafness to the incredible child underneath." As if summoned by their conversation, Maria appeared with Lucas in her arms. His chubby hands moved in excited signs, and his smile could have lit up the darkest corner of the building. He reached towards Sarah, his universal sign for wanting to be held, and as she took him, she felt the familiar pang of love mixed with fierce protectiveness that had driven her to fight for every child who'd passed through these doors. "We'll find you a family," she whispered to Lucas, though he couldn't hear her words. Instead, she signed them carefully, watching as his face broke into a grin that seemed to understand everything she couldn't say out loud. Outside, the rain continued to fall, but inside Maple Haven, hope flickered like a candle refusing to be extinguished. Monday morning arrived with the first snow of the season, blanketing Toronto in a pristine white that made the city look fresh and full of possibility. Sarah arrived at Maple Haven early, as was her custom, to find the building quiet except for the gentle sounds of children stirring in the residential wing. She was reviewing Lucas's file for the 100th time when she heard unfamiliar footsteps in the hallway. "Miss Martinez?" a warm voice called from the doorway. Sarah looked up to see a woman in her early 30s, with shoulder-length auburn hair and kind green eyes behind stylish glasses. She wore a professional navy blazer over dark jeans and carried herself with quiet confidence. "I'm Emma Thompson, your new administrative secretary. I know I'm a bit early, but I wanted to get settled before the day begins." Sarah smiled, grateful for any help with the mountain of paperwork that seemed to multiply daily. "Welcome to organized chaos," she said, gesturing to the stacks of files and reports covering every surface. "I hope you're ready for a challenge." As Emma settled into her desk in the main office area, Sarah noticed something different about the way she oriented herself in the space. Emma's eyes moved constantly, taking in visual cues, watching people's faces intently, and positioning herself where she could see multiple conversations at once. There was something familiar about these behaviors, but Sarah couldn't quite place it. The morning progressed with the usual whirlwind of activity. Caseworkers arrived with coffee and fresh stories from weekend home visits. Phones began ringing, and the daycare area filled with the chatter of children. Emma handled the administrative chaos with remarkable efficiency, managing calls, organizing files, and coordinating schedules with a skill that suggested years of experience. It was during lunch break that everything changed. Sarah was walking past the nursery when she saw Emma standing at the observation window watching Lucas play. Maria was on break, and the toddler sat alone among his toys, contentedly stacking blocks while the other children napped. What Sarah witnessed next stopped her in her tracks. Emma had entered the nursery and was kneeling at Lucas's level, but instead of speaking, her hands began to move in fluid, graceful signs. Lucas's head snapped up immediately, his eyes widening with surprise and delight. A huge smile spread across his face as he began signing back, his little hands moving with excited enthusiasm. Sarah watched in amazement as Emma and Lucas carried on what appeared to be a genuine conversation. Emma's signs were clear and expressive, and Lucas responded with an animation Sarah had rarely seen in him. He laughed, a sound Sarah could hear through the glass, and clapped his hands before launching into a series of rapid signs. Unable to contain her curiosity, Sarah entered the nursery. "Emma, I had no idea you knew sign language." Emma looked up, a slight flush coloring her cheeks. "I'm sorry, I should have asked permission before interacting with the children. When I saw him sitting alone, I couldn't help myself." "Please don't apologize," Sarah said quickly. "What were you two talking about?" Emma's face lit up as she translated. "He was telling me about his blocks and how he's building a house for his teddy bear. Then he asked if I could help him make it taller. He's incredibly articulate for his age. His vocabulary in ASL is remarkable." Lucas tugged on Emma's sleeve and signed something that made her laugh. "He says he likes my hand words and wants to know if I can teach him new ones." Sarah felt her throat tighten with emotion. "How long have you known sign language?" Emma's expression grew thoughtful as she continued to play with Lucas, building the block tower higher while maintaining perfect eye contact with him. "My younger brother Danny is deaf. I've been signing since I was 7 years old. When I saw the job posting for this position, something drew me here, but I had no idea." She paused, watching Lucas's animated face. "I had no idea there was a deaf child here who needed an advocate." The implications hit Sarah immediately. "Emma, would you be interested in learning more about Lucas's situation?" Over the next hour, as Lucas napped peacefully nearby, Emma absorbed every detail of his story with growing concern and determination. She listened to the accounts of rejected applications, the fears of prospective parents, and the looming threat of transfer to a group home. "This is heartbreaking," Emma said, her voice thick with emotion. "He's such a bright, loving child. Any family would be lucky to have him." "The challenge is helping people see past their preconceptions," Sarah explained. "Most people have never interacted with a deaf person, let alone considered raising a deaf child. They imagine it will be impossibly difficult." Emma was quiet for a long moment, watching Lucas sleep. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady and determined. "What if we could change that? What if we could show prospective families that deafness doesn't diminish a child's capacity for love, learning, and joy? My brother Danny is 28 now. He's a software engineer, he's married, he has friends, hobbies, dreams. His deafness is just one aspect of who he is." An idea began to form in Sarah's mind. Emma, would you be willing to help us in an official capacity, not just as a secretary, but as Lucas's advocate? You could help prepare families, teach them basic signs, show them what's possible. Emma's response was immediate. I'd be honored. This little boy deserves a family who will love and celebrate every part of who he is. As they talked, Lucas stirred from his nap, his eyes seeking familiar faces. When he saw Emma, his hands immediately began moving in excited signs. She responded naturally, and Sarah watched their easy communication with a growing sense of hope. Maybe, just maybe, they'd found the key to unlocking Lucas's future. 3 weeks after Emma's arrival, Maple Haven had transformed into something resembling organized hope rather than organized chaos. Emma had thrown herself into Lucas's case with a dedication that went far beyond her job description, creating informational packets about deaf children, researching deaf culture and ASL resources, and most importantly, spending hours each day with Lucas, helping him expand his signing vocabulary while documenting his remarkable progress. The November air was crisp and clear as Sarah reviewed the latest development in her office. Dr. Kim sat across from her desk, a smile playing at the corners of her usually serious expression. I have to admit, I was skeptical when you first mentioned Emma's plan, Dr. Kim said, flipping through Lucas's updated file. But the results speak for themselves. His language development has accelerated dramatically. His social engagement has improved. And frankly, he's never seemed happier. Through the office window, they could see Emma in the playroom with Lucas and 2 other children, conducting what she called inclusive play sessions, where hearing children learned basic signs while playing together. The sight of 4-year-old Amy signing friend to Lucas while they built a puzzle together had become routine, but it still made Sarah's heart swell. The real test comes this afternoon, Sarah said, checking her watch. The Patel family is coming for their second visit. The Patels had been different from the beginning. Raj, a mechanical engineer, and Priya, an elementary school teacher, had responded to Lucas's profile with curiosity rather than immediate concern. Their first visit 2 weeks ago had been promising. They'd spent time observing Lucas, asking thoughtful questions, and expressing genuine interest in learning about deaf culture. Emma knocked on the doorframe. "They're here," she said, her voice carefully controlled, but her eyes bright with nervous excitement. The Patel family entered the main office, looking both nervous and determined. Raj, tall and lanky with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, held hands with Priya, whose dark hair was pulled back in a neat ponytail and whose smile radiated warmth. Their 10-year-old daughter, Anya, hung close to her parents, her curiosity evident despite her shyness. "Thank you for coming back," Sarah said, shaking hands with each family member. "Lucas has been looking forward to seeing you again." Emma had spent the morning preparing Lucas for the visit, explaining in age-appropriate signs that his maybe family was coming to play with him again. His excitement had been palpable, though Emma had been careful to manage his expectations. They found Lucas in the nursery with Maria, who was teaching him new signs from a picture book. When he saw the Patels, his face lit up with recognition, and he immediately signed "hello," followed by what Emma had taught him was the sign for family. "He remembers us," Priya whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Emma knelt beside Lucas and began interpreting as he launched into an enthusiastic recap of his morning, complete with animated gestures about breakfast, playtime, and the snow he'd watched falling outside. The Patels listened intently, and Sarah noticed how naturally they maintained eye contact with Lucas, even though Emma was translating. "Can we try to talk with him ourselves?" Anya asked, her initial shyness giving way to fascination. Emma smiled. "Of course. Remember the signs I taught you last week?" For the next hour, the family engaged with Lucas in increasingly natural interactions. Raj's engineer's mind seemed perfectly suited to learning the logical structure of ASL, while Priya's teaching background helped her understand how to communicate concepts visually. But it was Anya who surprised everyone, picking up signs with remarkable speed and soon carrying on basic conversations with Lucas about toys, colors, and favorite foods. "He's so smart," Anya declared after Lucas successfully taught her the sign for butterfly using a picture book. "And he's funny," he made jokes. Emma's translation had captured Lucas's playful personality perfectly. His tendency to sign silly variations of words to make people laugh, his expressive facial expressions that conveyed emotions as clearly as words, and his remarkable ability to focus and engage despite the world's sounds being closed to him. As the visit continued, Sarah noticed the subtle shift in the family's body language. The initial nervousness gave way to genuine connection. When Lucas spontaneously signed hug and reached for Priya, Sarah saw tears in the woman's eyes as she gathered him close. "We'd like to talk privately," Raj said finally, his voice steady but emotional. Sarah led them to a quiet conference room while Emma stayed with Lucas, reading him stories in sign language. Through the glass partition, they could see the pair engaged in animated conversation, Lucas's laughter bubbling up frequently. "We've been thinking about this for weeks," Priya began, reaching for her husband's hand. "At first, we were scared. We wondered if we could provide what he needs, if we could learn enough, if we could be good parents to a deaf child. But watching him today," Raj continued, "watching how he connects, how he learns, how he brings joy to everyone around him, we realized we were asking the wrong questions. The question isn't whether we can handle his deafness. The question is whether we can love him completely, support his growth, and help him reach his full potential." Anya nodded eagerly. "I want to be his big sister. I want to learn more signs so we can talk about everything. He's going to teach me so much." Sarah felt her chest tighten with the emotion she'd been holding back for months. "Are you saying you'd like to move forward with the adoption process?" Priya wiped away tears she could no longer contain. "We're saying we want to give Lucas what he deserves, a family who sees him exactly as he is." "Perfect." The paperwork and legal processes would take months, but that afternoon marked the true beginning of Lucas's journey home. As the Patels left with promises to return the next day to begin the formal transition process, Emma and Sarah stood watching Lucas play, his contentment evident in every movement. "You know what the most beautiful part of all this is?" Emma said, watching as Lucas carefully arranged his blocks in a pattern only he understood. "What's that?" Sarah asked. "The Patels didn't fall in love with Lucas despite his deafness. They fell in love with him, period. His deafness is just part of who he is, like his brown eyes or his infectious laugh or his incredible creativity. They're not trying to fix him or change him, they're embracing all of him." 6 months later, Sarah received a photo in the mail that now sits framed on her desk. It shows Lucas, now 2.5, sitting between Raj and Priya at their kitchen table, all three of them signing "I love you" to the camera. Anya kneels behind them, her arms wrapped around Lucas's shoulders, both children grinning widely. In the background, colorful ASL alphabet cards decorate the refrigerator, and a small sign by the door reads, "The Patel Family," in both English and ASL. The accompanying letter, written in Priya's neat handwriting, shared updates about Lucas's progress in preschool, a bilingual ASL/English program where he was thriving, his friendship with their neighbors' children, who were all learning signs, and his latest obsession with building increasingly elaborate structures with his blocks. But the final paragraph was what Sarah treasured most. "Lucas has taught us that love isn't about hearing words, it's about truly seeing each other, about connecting in ways that transcend sound, about celebrating the unique gifts each person brings to a family. He hasn't just found his forever home with us, he's made our house a home in ways we never imagined possible. Thank you for never giving up on him, and for helping us find each other." At Maple Haven, Emma continues to work as both administrative secretary and deaf advocacy coordinator, a position Sarah created specifically for her. She's helped place 3 more deaf children with loving families, and her inclusive play sessions have become so popular that the agency now hosts monthly deaf awareness workshops for prospective adoptive families. On quiet afternoons, when the offices are still and the paperwork is temporarily under control, Sarah sometimes finds herself thinking about the ripple effects of compassion. One young woman's willingness to kneel down and speak to a lonely child in his own language had changed not just Lucas's life, but the lives of an entire family who discovered that love knows no barriers, and that sometimes the most beautiful conversations happen without a single word being spoken aloud. In a world full of noise, they had all learned to listen with their hearts, and in doing so, had created something infinitely more powerful than sound, a family built on understanding, acceptance, and unconditional love.